When the billionaire's fiancée walked into the ballroom, Ava dropped the champagne tray in shock. She's just a waitress. That woman ruined her family. What would you do if the woman who destroyed your mother was now marrying your boss? Would you stay silent or crash the wedding and risk everything? No one noticed the glass that shattered at Ava's feet. The music swelled, the lights glittered off crystal chandeliers, and the guests turned to welcome the bride-to-be radiant, poised, flawless. But Ava stood frozen, her hands trembling inside white gloves, her eyes locked onto that face. That face, she had seen it once before, 10 years ago, through the crack of a service door in a casino hallway. A woman in a black gown, slipping out of the accounting room moments before the security footage vanished. Moments before Ava's mother, a temporary bookkeeper, was accused of embezzlement. The charges were never cleared. Her mother died in a public hospital, reputation in ruins, name erased. And now that woman was walking into power, into legacy, marrying Everett Lennox, a billionaire who once told Ava, "Dignity is non-negotiable." But how do you stop a wedding everyone celebrates when you're the only one who knows it's a lie? How do you confront a woman who already erased your past and is ready to erase you? Ava has one night, one shot. Stay, because when the truth hits the ballroom, nothing will remain standing. The linen storage room in the basement was the only place without cameras. And tonight, Ava needed that darkness. She slammed the metal door shut behind her, pressing her back to the shelves of folded towels. Her heart thudded like she'd just sprinted a mile. Her fingers, still trembling in white gloves, unlocked her personal phone, a dusty folder buried beneath years of silence. There it was, a blurry photo, cropped from an old case file. A woman in a black evening gown, caught mid-turn, a sliver of a scar on her left wrist, barely visible under the sheer fabric, the same scar Ava had glimpsed just hours earlier when champagne spilled down that very arm. It couldn't be coincidence. She reached into a hidden box under the linen stacks, her mother's file, copied and kept through the years. Letters to lawyers, disciplinary notes from the casino, one final page in cursive. Someone disabled the cameras. Believe what you saw. Ava opened her email app. She typed the executive secretary's address, attached the photo. In the subject line, she wrote just 5 words before it's too late. Then she hit send. The screen dimmed. She closed the phone, exhaled slowly, and stepped toward the door. But then footsteps above. She froze. Didn't breathe. Sure to breathe. Ardinowarn. Miri Shawanas on the heels. Sharp. Deliberate. Stopping right above the basement stairwell. Then a voice soft, but clear through the steel. Some things are better left buried. A beat of silence. The heels clicked away. The upper door shut. Ava's hand tightened around her phone. The scar on her mother's file seemed to glow under the flickering bulb. She had reopened a door long sealed. And something or someone on the other side was now awake. The following morning, Ava reported for duty like nothing had happened. The ballroom had been cleaned, the champagne stains wiped away, but her hands still shook when no one was looking. She pushed the memory down and focused on polishing glassware behind the bar. That's when the call came through her earpiece. A manager's voice, clipped and cold, Ava Lynn. Report to admin suite, now. She walked the carpeted corridor with a tightening knot in her chest. Inside the suite, the resort's director of operations sat behind a sleek glass desk, arms folded. On the monitor beside him, a video paused mid-frame Ava, inside a staff-only computer terminal room, a place she wasn't authorized to enter. That's not what it looks like, she began, her voice dry in her throat. Isn't it? The director cut in, pressing play. The footage rolled, Ava glancing over her shoulder, then logging into a desktop. The timestamp glowed red in the corner. Her face was pale, focused, distorted to minnerwust. Guilty. She accessed restricted systems, another voice said. Ava turned to see the billionaire's fiancée standing at the side of the room, arms crossed, her smile tight. She's been following me. Sure you were. Snooping. I believe she's violating guest privacy and possibly threatening me. That's absurd, Ava snapped, but no one flinched. The director tapped the desk. Even if unintentional, this is a serious breach. In a five-star environment, perception is reality. I didn't go there to spy. I was looking for an old schedule form. Someone left their ID. Her words faltered. The fiancé looked away, almost bored. The director reached into a drawer and pulled out a disciplinary form. 2-day suspension. Submit a written account by end of shift. By the time Ava returned to the break room, her locker had been disturbed. She pulled open the drawer and found her personal belongings scattered. Nestled atop her apron was a note scribbled in cursive on hotel stationery. Don't touch what isn't yours. First and final warning. A chill ran down her spine. She wasn't just being watched now. She was being hunted. 2 days off the schedule felt like a lifetime. Ava kept her phone on silent, checked her inbox every hour, nothing. No reply from the secretary, no follow-up from anyone upstairs. Just silence, like her message had vanished into a void. On the third day, she returned uniform pressed, hair tied tight, trying to pretend the walls weren't closing in. But the eyes were different now. Glances lingered too long. Conversations halted when she walked past. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was something worse marked. Desperate, Ava reached out to the only person who had once shown her kindness, Bennett, the billionaire's longtime executive assistant. He'd once defended her during a floor spill incident and had always smiled at her like she mattered. She waited by the staff elevator until he appeared, then stepped forward quickly. Mr. Bennett, can I talk to you? Just a minute. He hesitated, eyes flicking to the camera above them, then nodded. Make it quick. On the rooftop terrace, with the wind cutting through the heat, Ava showed him the photo. The woman in black, the scar. She changed her name, Ava whispered. But it's her. She was involved in something years ago. My mother got blamed for it. Bennett looked at the photo, expression unreadable. He didn't ask why Ava still had case files. He didn't ask how she got the image. I don't want anything, she added. He deserves to know. After a pause, Bennett nodded. I'll look into it. Quietly, Ava exhaled, hopeful for the first time in days. But the next morning, her badge wouldn't scan. A security officer escorted her straight to HR, where a formal letter was waiting. She'd been terminated effective immediately. Unauthorized access, the woman behind the desk said. And last night, a confidential guest contract was leaked from your email address. What? That's not possible. I didn't. My password. We traced the send time. Logged in from your staff terminal. Ava stood frozen, heart in freefall. Someone had framed her. Completely. She walked out of the office alone. Her nameplate had already been removed from the break room. One of her coworkers turned away as she passed, pretending not to see. That night, her inbox was empty. But her DMs weren't. Sorry, I can't be seen talking to you. I need this job. The war wasn't just with one woman anymore. It was with the whole machine. The message came at 8:03 am. Surmy one enters. Sharp. Please report to Human Resources. Immediately, Ava's heart sank. She entered the HR floor too quiet, too cold, and was greeted not with a smile but a printed envelope already waiting on the desk. The HR manager didn't even look up when she gestured for Ava to sit. We've concluded our investigation, the woman said flatly. You're being terminated. Effective immediately. Ava blinked. Terminated why? The manager tapped the folder. Unauthorized access to guest data. Leaking confidential contracts. Inappropriate conduct toward VIP clients. And she paused. You've been recorded confronting a guest in a restricted hallway. That footage is circulating online. This violates multiple conduct codes. But none of that is true, Ava said, her voice cracking. Someone used my log and I didn't leak anything. I tried to. This is not a discussion. Miss Monroe, the manager interrupted. Your name has been flagged in our internal system. You are now permanently ineligible for rehire within any Lennox property worldwide. Your security clearance has been revoked. You will not be allowed to enter any affiliated premises moving forward. Ava stared. This is insane. The woman slid a paper across the desk. It bore the words, termination justification, breach of ethics, internal risk. Client safety concern. It wasn't just a firing. It was an erasure. You have 10 minutes to collect your belongings, the manager said. A security escort is waiting outside. Ava rose in silence. Her legs felt foreign beneath her. Outside the glass wall, two guards in blazers stood like statues. As she walked past the break room, she noticed her nameplate was gone. Her locker already emptied. Someone had wiped her out preemptively. By noon, the access to her employee portal had vanished. The last email she received was an automated exit notice. She called twice to appeal. No one picked up. At 5:14 p.m., she received a single reply. Your inquiry has been closed. Do not attempt further contact. Ava sat in the dark that night, uniform folded in her lap like a flag draped over something that had died. Everything she'd built was gone. But somewhere, buried deep in the past, was the one truth they hadn't buried yet. It was just after sunset when Ava climbed the narrow steps to the old camera shop, its windows coated in dust, the sign faded by years of salt air. She knocked 3 times light, hesitant. The door opened slowly. Mr. Morris stood there, older than she remembered, his silver hair thinner now, his eyes behind thick glasses squinting through time. Ava, he said, surprised. You helped me once, she said quickly. I need to ask you something from that gala night. May 12th. Did you ever save anything? He didn't speak, just stepped aside and let her in. The back room smelled of old film and linseed oil. Cameras, bulbs, wires, some relics. Some museum-worthy lined the walls like forgotten soldiers. In the corner, he knelt beside a dusty metal case. I remember that night, he murmured. Something always felt off. He pulled out 3 small DV tapes, labeled in careful script. One read Atlantic Gala, May the 12th. I wired an auxiliary lens for lighting tests, nothing official. Just habit. Ava plugged it in. Static flickered. Then the blurry outlines of the ballroom. White linens, slow dancing guests, crystal chandeliers glowing like constellations. Laughter in the background, clinking glasses. And then movement. A shadow slipped past the buffet table and through the staff door. Ava's breath caught. She paused the tape, zoomed. The woman was angled away from the lens, but the walk was unmistakable, shoulders back. Left hip tilt. The Cartier bracelet glinted as she pushed the door. That's her, Ava whispered. She was there. The night everything fell apart. Morris watched the screen quietly. Then he turned to his desk, reached into the lowest drawer, and pulled out a manila envelope. I almost gave this to someone, he said, placing it in her hands. But I didn't know who to trust. Until now. Inside were stills, time codes, metadata logs, everything to verify the footage's authenticity. He looked at her and added softly, I remember your mother. She didn't deserve what happened. Ava clenched the envelope. Her throat tightened, but she didn't cry. Not this time. You saw all this. Back then, I didn't. But I stayed quiet. I was afraid. She nodded slowly. So was I. But we can't be anymore. In that small, dusty room lit only by the hum of an old screen, something shifted. For weeks, Ava had been alone fighting shadows, chasing ghosts. But now she had proof. She had a witness. She had a name. And for the first time, she wasn't falling. She was climbing back. The lights of the casino flickered like false promises, red, gold, and blue chasing shadows across velvet carpets. Ava, just 17, crouched behind the bar counter, her hands clutching a dish towel soaked with tonic water. She had been polishing glasses when the alarms blared. That sound, shrill and jagged, ripped through the air. Security surged past. Guests froze mid-toast. Somewhere beyond the walls, the vault feed had gone dark. Through the narrow service door, Ava saw it all unfold, her mother Lucille being stopped by 2 guards. She stumbled, clutching the accounting book, its pages scattering like broken wings. I didn't do anything, Lucille pleaded, but no one listened. And then, the woman in black. She stepped from the operations office, unhurried, Cartier glinting at her wrist. Her heels struck the marble like punctuation marks. Behind her trailed a man sharp-jawed, too calm. Ava would later see his face on an Interpol bulletin. But that night, all she saw was silence. The woman never looked at Lucille, never paused. She walked past her like smoke. And Ava, she gripped the bar so hard her knuckles blanched. Her mother's voice frantic, cracking, vanished into the hallway. No one came. No one helped. A security camera above blinked once, then died. That was the night Ava stopped believing that justice was inevitable. That was the night a question carved itself into her bones. Why did she walk free while my mother was buried by a lie? Years later, Ava stood alone in the staff linen room of the Lenox Resort. Her name, stitched neatly in white thread on her uniform, looked like a sentence: quiet, restrained, unchangeable. The low hum of industrial dryers filled the background, blending with the scent of starch and faint detergent. Everything felt sterile, too clean for the weight she carried. To the world, she was just another hospitality worker, another smiling server pouring champagne beneath crystal chandeliers. But Ava had chosen this place deliberately. This wasn't just a job. It was a return to the scene of a crime that had never been solved. She had picked the Lenox Resort because she knew who owned it. The same billionaire who once told her, after a spilled glass of wine at a senator's table, people make mistakes. But dignity is non-negotiable. She had never forgotten those words, because no one had ever said anything like that to her or to her mother before. She didn't know then that one day, he'd be engaged to the woman who walked away while Lucille was dragged out of a casino, accused and erased. So Ava stayed bearer until. She worked. She waited. She memorized everything: names, schedules, back entrances. She knew where the spare key cards were stored, which elevators skipped the main floor, and which night staff liked to leave early. She knew where secrets lived. Not for revenge. Samar ones. Not at first. But because a question had clawed at her ribs every night since she was 17. Why did that woman walk free while my mother died nameless? Above her, the engagement party glittered: laughter, string quartets, flashbulbs. She stood beneath it all, pressed against the industrial shelves like a shadow, her pulse rising with the static of old memories. She checked her phone. The email to the executive secretary had sent. She closed her eyes. Somewhere upstairs, champagne was pouring. Somewhere upstairs, the past was dressed in white. And Ava was done waiting. The hum of the linen room faded beneath the weight of what Ava held in her hands: a hard drive, old and warm, like it remembered too much. She sat on the cold tile floor, knees to her chest, eyes fixed on the reflection in the brushed metal. Not a girl anymore. Not a ghost in a uniform. A woman. And yet, deep inside, something cracked. Her mother's voice echoed soft, weary. When you don't have power, you keep your head down. You survive, Ava. That's all we ever get to do. Ava had lived by those words. She had become the invisible worker, the obedient one, the polite yes ma'am in every hallway. No mistakes. No noise. Just surviving. But it hadn't saved Lucille. She'd still died with a ruined name, a forgotten file, a truth buried beneath paperwork and fear. Ava reached into her pocket, pulled out the crumpled photo: the woman in black, the sliver of Cartier, the tilt of a smirk that still haunted her dreams. Now that woman was back, smiling at cameras, toasted in toasts, wearing white and rewriting legacy. And all Ava had was this: a drive, a question, and a decision. She rose slowly, legs stiff, back straight, walked toward the narrow window. Outside, moonlight sliced across the parking lot like a scalpel, sharp and quiet. I was 17, she whispered. I didn't know how, but she wasn't 17 now. She reached for the power button. And this time, she didn't flinch. Ava returned to the present like a diver breaching the surface, lungs aching, vision sharp. She sat against the equipment room wall, the cold glow of the aging laptop casting shadows across her face. The hard drive whirred softly, its blinking light a heartbeat in the silence. On screen, a progress bar crawled forward. Her fingers tapped nervously on the trackpad, then stopped folder found 2016 Casino Security Beta. One click, it now was. Clips opened. grainy and unedited, but marked with clear timestamps. She scrolled past hours of empty corridors and blurred figures until she froze. There, pausing mid-stride under the casino's ceiling lights, a woman in a black evening gown. Her hair curled just so, a Cartier watch flashing under her sleeve. Walking beside her, a man whose profile would years later appear on Interpol's fugitive board. Ava hit pause, squinted, then zoomed in. It was her, the face that had haunted her memory for years, now perfectly clear on screen. The same face now featured in glossy engagement portraits. The woman about to marry into power, wrapped in diamonds and deception. Ava stared, unblinking. This wasn't just a hunch anymore. This wasn't memory, or intuition, or grief talking. This was evidence. Was a warning. And this time, silence wouldn't save anyone. Some truths hide in shadows. Others wait in old hard drives ready to shatter everything. Ava pulled the baseball cap low over her eyes. Her shoulders hunched beneath the bulk of a light-rigged case as she slipped through the staff entrance of the resort. The badge around her neck read, Assistant Light Crew. Morris Production, courtesy of Mr. Morris himself. No one gave her a second glance, just another backstage tech in a sea of preparations for the wedding of the year. But every step she took felt like walking back into the lion's den. She passed the hallway where management had once humiliated her. The bar where she'd worked countless night shifts. The employee locker room now sealed with a new keypad lock. The warm resort lights reflected off the marble like ghosts of her past places that had erased her without a trace. In her coat pocket was a printed, still from the security footage Morris had recovered, the fiancé's face, clearly visible beside a man with a known Interpol notice. In the flash drive, she carried undeniable video evidence with time-stamped data. She stopped outside the operations suite, where the wedding organizers were finalizing the ceremony. Her fingers curled around the keys in her palm. This time, there would be no anonymous emails. No whispers in the dark. Only truth and confrontation. It's not just about proving the truth, she whispered. It's about who dares to speak it aloud. Ava stepped onto the outer patio behind the ballroom, careful to stay out of the main camera angles. From her angle, she saw the billionaire speaking with the event coordinator. The moment was perfect, calm, casual, vulnerable. She took a breath, moved forward. Excuse me. The voice rang out sharp, polished, unmistakable. The fiancé appeared from behind the floral arrangements, flanked by two security guards. Ava froze. She doesn't belong here, the woman said, pointing. She's been banned from this property for violating confidentiality. And now she's back snooping during my wedding rehearsal. No, Ava started, but the guards already grabbed her arms. The guests on the patio began to turn. Don't believe her, Ava said louder, twisting to face them. I have proof she's not who she says she is. The woman raised her hand dramatically. See, delusional. Dangerous. Someone help. Phones came out. One guest started filming. Another whispered, Isn't that the waitress who got fired? As Ava was dragged across the terrace, her flash drive slipped from her pocket, hitting the tiles with a click. No one noticed. They tossed her out through the service gate like discarded linen. By nightfall, the clip was already trending. Disgraced former staffer, crashes, billionaire wedding rehearsal. News anchors speculated. The resort issued a brief statement, security breach. Individual no longer employed. Ava sat on the bench of a gas station restroom, staring into the cracked mirror, bruises forming on her arm. You tried, she told her reflection. You stood up, and no one listened. But the reflection didn't answer. It only looked back haunted, and still not broken. The restroom lights flickered overhead, humming faintly above the cracked mirror. Ava sat on the edge of the sink, knees drawn up, her uniform dusty from the scuffle. Her lip was split. One of the earrings had torn loose. Her reflection looked foreign, like someone halfway between a warrior and a ghost. The video was already online. She could feel it spreading like wildfire. Former waitress crashes, billionaire wedding, flashing across feeds. People watching only a few seconds, making up their minds. Her phone vibrated once, an unknown number. It's everywhere. I'm sorry. Ava didn't answer. Instead, she looked into the mirror, deep into the eyes staring back. Not the scared 17-year-old from the casino. Not the girl folding napkins in the banquet hall. Not the employee who was told she did, but the woman who'd tried failed, and now, if everything's already gone, what else is there to fear, she whispered. The mirror offered no answer, just silence, and the sharp stillness before a storm. But in that stillness, something settled, not defeat. Resolve, it reared this worshipichin. The ballroom had never looked so perfect. Golden chandeliers dripped light across silk-draped tables. Violins trembled through hidden speakers, and the air carried that impossible scent of wealth and roses. The guest investors, foreign dignitaries, media moguls shifted in polished shoes and raised crystal flutes. Every camera was turned toward the altar. The billionaire stood at the center, tailored suit spotless, face unreadable. And beside him, the fiancée, dressed in custom ivory lace, eyes like mirrors, smile carved to perfection. Behind the technical booth, Morris adjusted the feed. The laptop beside him hummed quietly, its screen open to the video time-stamped, authenticated, ready. Ava stood just off the backstage curtains, dressed in black, headset tucked into one ear. Her fingers gripped the earpiece like a lifeline. She could feel the pulse in her neck, the dryness in her throat. "It's now or never," she whispered. Morris gave a slight nod. On his cue, the screen behind the altar began to flicker. Ava stepped forward quiet, determined toward the edge of the stage. She didn't care if they threw her out again. The truth was already loaded, waiting to detonate. Everyone looked forward to the vows, but what came next would silence the room. The room fell into stunned silence as the projection began. A grainy security clip from years ago, time-stamped and uncut. The bride-to-be, dressed in a sleek black gown, strolled down a restricted vault corridor, arm in arm with a man flagged by Interpol. Ava didn't blink. Her heart hammered, but her eyes stayed locked on the screen. The billionaire's expression, usually carved in stone, flickered for a split second. Then came the second screen, a cascade of documents. Multiple aliases tied to the same woman. Offshore accounts, passport scans, travel records under false names. And finally, a video of her chance meeting with the billionaire at a charity gala clearly staged. The guests began to murmur. Someone gasped. The string quartet faltered, then fell silent. Still, the bride didn't flinch. "That's enough," she said smoothly, stepping into the center. Her voice was crisp, practiced. "This is absurd." She turned to the crowd, then to the billionaire. She was fired, wasn't she? For violating guest privacy, for threatening VIPs? A hush fell again. "She's obsessed," the bride added, her tone tightening. "I mean, look at her. She can't stand that she's out and I'm in. This entire charade, it's her trying to crash our wedding out of spite." A few heads nodded. Doubt crawled back into the room. Phones lifted. Guests whispered, glancing between the screens and Ava. Ava stood still. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her throat felt like glass. The billionaire said nothing. His eyes remained fixed on Ava, calculating, unreadable. And then the screen blinked. The projector flickered once, then again, and suddenly a new video started playing. No one had cued it, and what it showed would flip the room upside down. At first, the screen was black, then static. Then came a voice. Ava's voice, except it wasn't. The intonation was off, just slightly. Enough to feel wrong. On screen, a grainy clip showed Ava in a dim hallway, speaking to a blurred man in a suit. Her lips moved, but the audio was dubbed. "I don't care what it costs," the voice said, "as long as the Linux files are destroyed." Ava froze. Her body locked. That wasn't her voice. That wasn't even the real footage. Gasps erupted. Phones tilted upward again. Another voice chimed in an altered whisper. "She's been working with them the whole time. I warned you." The crowd's mood flipped. Guests turned in their seats. Someone hissed, "She's corporate espionage." "Is this true?" a woman near the front asked sharply. A man in the back began live streaming. "The waitress who just crashed the wedding might be a spy." Ava backed away from the stage. The projection kept playing. A headline flashed, "Former employee tied to data leak scandal." Clips of her being escorted out of the resort. Her past disciplinary reports flashed up like damning evidence. The bride stood completely still. No smile. Just watching, Ava's legs gave out. She stumbled to one knee, eyes wide, breath shallow. Whispers swept the room like wildfire. She was just bitter. I knew it. Is he going to press charges? The billionaire's hand, which had begun to lift toward Ava, now stopped in midair. He slowly lowered it. Silence. Then footsteps. Someone was walking in. Deliberate. Oh, stubborn. This is steady. A voice rang out across the ballroom. That footage is a lie. And I can prove it. A hush fell over the ballroom as the doors creaked open. Framed in the arch stood Mr. Morris, soaked from rain, clutching a hard drive and a sealed validation report. His voice was steady as he walked down the aisle. What you just saw was a lie. And I can prove it. Ava turned slowly, barely daring to hope. The billionaire raised his hand to stop the murmurs. Let him speak. Morris approached the control booth, handed the technician the drive. Original footage. Full timestamp, certified. The technician glanced at the billionaire, then played it. On-screen Ava, in the same hallway, but this time speaking to Mr. Morris. No shady figure, no false audio. Can you make sure this camera backs up remotely, she had asked, in case someone tries to wipe it? Her voice was calm, protective. The clip ended with a clear timestamp and a certification overlay from an independent lab. A wave of realization swept through the room. The bride stepped forward, voice cracking. They must have edited this, can't? The billionaire's tone cut like ice. Enough, Salvador nudged. He turned to his security detail, traced the forged clip. I want the source identified. Around them, the crowd was already shifting. Phones were back up, but this time recording Ava. Not as an intruder, but as a survivor. She didn't move. Just sat there, dazed but unbroken. And for the first time that night, the whispers weren't accusations. They were awe, but just when truth finally seemed safe, she smiled. And what she pulled from her necklace would burn it all down again. By morning, footage from the ballroom had exploded across every major news outlet. Ava's name trended alongside headlines like, Waitress unmasks heiress at billionaire wedding. The image of her kneeling, stunned under the projection, then standing as Morris played the real footage, replayed in countless loops. Comments flooded in, some apologetic, others awestruck. Inside the resort, employees who once ignored her now stepped aside, eyes lowered. The billionaire issued a formal statement, full cooperation with international investigations, suspension of key staff, and a personal apology addressed to the family of Lucille Carver. Behind the scenes, Ava's former supervisor was quietly removed as investigators began uncovering who had suppressed the original footage and mishandled her termination. In the garden court near the rotunda, Ava stood alone, wind stirring the hem of her jacket. She wasn't smiling, but her silence carried weight. Inside the executive wing, the leadership committee was holding a closed-door hearing. Former colleagues, those who once distanced themselves, now filed in one by one to give statements. Some averted their eyes. Others simply whispered, I'm sorry. Ava said nothing. She didn't need to. That just as calm returned, the main ballroom doors opened once more. Two officers entered, flanking the bride-to-be. She didn't struggle, didn't flinch, just walked like a queen in a coronation, expression unreadable. As cameras surged toward her, she stopped in front of the crowd, turned slowly and smiled. You all think it's over, she said, her voice crisp, cutting through the hush. Her fingers unclasped the delicate necklace at her throat, revealing a hidden USB. Holding it up between two crimson nails, she added, let's see what this does. The ballroom screens flickered again as the USB was inserted. Gasps rippled across the room. A new video loaded, grainy, with altered lighting and distorted audio. It showed Ava in a dimly lit hallway, handing over what looked like confidential documents to a shadowy man. The voiceover was unfamiliar, but edited to sound like hers, saying things about corporate access and leverage. A hush fell over the crowd. Eyes turned. Murmurs rose. Someone whispered. Again, the same media outlets that had just praised her now hovered with hesitation. Phones were raised, recording. Ava stood frozen, breath locked in her chest. The billionaire turned to her, not angry, not afraid, just unreadable. The bride-to-be, now handcuffed, turned her head toward Ava and whispered, "Told you, you weren't ready." Her lips curved into a smirk, defiant even as two officers held her arms. But before the room could tilt again into suspicion, a voice cut through, "That's fake." The lights shifted. From the tech pit at the back of the room, Morris stepped forward, holding a small external drive in one hand and a printed timestamp report in the other. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "This is the uncut master feed," he said, calm and absolute. "Security cam. Original metadata. Time verified. I had it scheduled for automatic release just in case." He nodded to the AV operator. The real footage played instantly, side by side with the fake. The difference was night and day. In the real clip, Ava was handing a lighting cue chart to Morris, discussing stage design, not espionage. The supposed man in shadows was just Morris himself, in his old work uniform. There was no voiceover, no code words, no betrayal, just work. Simple, ordinary, and now fully exonerating. This time, no one spoke. No gasps, no buzz. "Sorry once, sure now one turn." Just stillness, then a single clap. Another followed. And then the room erupted, not in chaos, but applause. Ava didn't cry. She didn't bow. She stood where she was, shoulders square, while the woman who tried to destroy her was led past for the last time. And this time, no one looked away. The wedding was history now. No press remained. No streaming feeds. Just the hum of distant cleaning crews and the faint scent of crushed petals in the hallway. In his private office, quiet, wood-paneled, untouched by scandal, the billionaire sat behind a minimalist desk. No security, no assistants. Only Ava across from him, standing still, her hands folded neatly in front of her. "I asked them to leave us alone," he said, "because this isn't for the papers." He reached into the drawer and took out 2 envelopes. Thick, sealed, heavy, even in silence. "I owe you something," he said, meeting her eyes. "Not just for today, but for every silent injustice you endured because no one listened." He placed the envelopes side by side. "This one," he tapped the first, "appoints you head of hospitality. Full authority, equity, the right to reform every department from the ground up, including the one that failed your mother." He tapped the second. "This one is from my global board. It invites you to serve as director of a new justice initiative. A real one. You'll decide how the fund operates, who it protects, and what it stands for." Ava looked down at the envelopes. Neither gleamed. There were no golden seals, no applause. Just paper and ink and everything they represented. "I built this empire to protect someone I loved," he continued quietly. "You reminded me that real love means protecting those the world forgets." She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She reached out and took both envelopes in a single, calm motion. She didn't say thank you. She didn't ask for more. "For my mother," she said. Just that, and the man who once watched her serve drinks in silence stood and bowed his head. 1 week later, the ballroom wasn't set for weddings. No string quartet. No rose petals. Just a modest podium, a silent crowd, and a new banner hung above the stage, "Lucille Foundation for Justice." Ava stood before them not as a server, not as a witness, but as the founder of something that would outlive both scandal and silence. She didn't read from notes, and her voice was steady. "No empire built on lies will last," she said. No one clapped. No one needed to. The truth didn't require applause, only recognition. In the front row, the billionaire sat quietly, hands clasped, eyes fixed on her not with pride, but with respect. And when Ava stepped down, he stood. "You once dropped a tray and I told you something," he said softly. "People can make mistakes, but dignity is non-negotiable." He extended his hand not as a billionaire, but as someone who had finally learned what it meant to stand beside truth. That night, the resort changed its lobby sign. The golden script that once read, "Elegance is everything," was gone. In its place, "Trust is luxury, and it must be earned." Later, as the billionaire passed the new plaque, he paused. "Just for a second. You didn't just save me," he murmured. "You gave your mother justice, and gave us all a reason to rebuild." Ava smiled. For the first time in years, not because she'd been forgiven, but because she had finally been seen. 3 days after the launch of the Lucille Foundation, Ava returned to the resort for one last walk through the main floor. It wasn't nostalgia. It was closure. The staff whispered, some nodded, others still avoided her gaze. Change didn't come all at once. Not for everyone. As she passed the central lounge, she noticed a clipboard left behind guest shift logs. Someone had scribbled across the back, "Charity doesn't fix arrogance." And below it, Ava's name, crossed out. Old habits died hard. But then footsteps. A young hostess, no older than Ava had once been, picked up the clipboard. She looked at the scribble, then looked at Ava. Without a word, Mom, she walked to the front desk and dropped the clipboard in the bin. "Don't worry," she said. "We see you now." Moments later, another server adjusted the new plaque. "Trust is luxury, and it must be earned." And in that small, unspoken moment, the real legacy began. She lost her mother to a lie. She lost her job, her name, her future just for asking the right question. But today, Ava walks with more than justice. She's not just a survivor. She's the new head of hospitality, a board member of a global foundation, not because someone handed her a gift, but because she refused to stay silent. She changed her life, not by luck, by truth. And now, we ask you, if you knew the truth could cost you everything, would you still speak up? Have you ever watched someone rise not because they were chosen, but because they chose to stand? Tell us in the comments. We read everyone. And don't forget to subscribe to Unveiled Wealth, where kindness sparks redemption and silence breaks power.